The kind of place where time seems to stand still, and the smell of old vinyl and faded memories hangs thick in the air. You're casually flipping through a stack of old records, the kind that might have been lost or forgotten decades ago, when something catches your eye. It's not the cover art, not the price tag, there's just something about this one record that feels different. Maybe it's the way the corners are worn, or how the label is faded but still visible, hinting at a story waiting to be uncovered. So, naturally, you buy it, expecting maybe a cool find, a hidden gem of music, or a nostalgic piece of history to add to your collection. But when you get home and finally play it, you're hit with something you never expected, a voice. Not just any voice, but a clear, calm voice speaking directly to you, and here's the chilling part, it says your full name. Yes, the very name you go by every single day, the one you've heard 1,000 times in your life, now echoing mysteriously through the speaker, coming from a voice trapped in a record that's decades old. Right now, you might be thinking, is this some kind of prank? A clever recording trick? Or something much weirder? And I promise, by the time you finish watching this video, you're going to know exactly what's going on, why that voice said her full name, and what this record really means. But here's the thing, before we get to that answer, I want you to feel what she felt, the mix of curiosity, disbelief, and deep unease that took over as she listened. Because this isn't just about a mysterious old record, it's about something far darker, something that taps into fears we all share. What if there are things out there, things beyond explanation, reaching out in ways we never imagined? You see, the moment she heard her name, something shifted. It wasn't just a surprise, it was like the record was a portal, a message from someone or something with a connection to her past, her family, or maybe even her future. And this isn't just a story for entertainment, it's a mystery with real emotions, real stakes, and questions that will keep you awake at night. Throughout this video, I'm going to take you step by step through what happened when this girl bought that old record, the strange clues she uncovered, and the reactions of everyone around her. You'll meet the key players involved, her closest friends who tried to make sense of it, experts who gave their opinions, and the shadowy history behind the record itself that no one expected. But I won't spoil it all now. Instead, I want you to really think about this. Have you ever felt like something was watching you, or that you were connected to a story much bigger than yourself? Because that's exactly the feeling she got, the creeping sense that this voice was meant for her, and only her. And I'm betting you'll start to wonder the same thing as you watch. So, are you ready to dive into a story where the line between reality and the unexplained blurs? Where a simple purchase turns into a haunting journey of discovery, fear, and maybe even hope? If you've ever loved true mystery stories, creepy real-life paranormal accounts, or just want to see what happens when the ordinary suddenly becomes extraordinary, you're in the right place. Stick with me till the end, and I promise, you'll get the answer you came for. You'll know why that voice called her name and what it means for her, and maybe, just maybe, for all of us. But before I reveal that, there's one last thing you need to know about the record's origins, something that connects this girl's story to a decades-old mystery that was thought to be long buried and forgotten. The moment she discovered that connection, everything changed. And that's where our story really begins. The story really starts to unravel when you get a closer look at the girl herself, her life, her recent choices, and the subtle clues that might explain why she found herself holding that eerie record in the first place. She's not some random person stumbling upon a spooky artifact, she's someone whose world has been quietly shifting in ways that no one around her fully understands. Just weeks before buying the record, she had been dealing with a string of strange coincidences, little moments that didn't quite add up but seemed too persistent to ignore. Maybe you've had days like that, where the universe seems to be dropping hints that you can't shake off, even if you don't want to believe they mean anything. It all started with small things, missed calls from unknown numbers, fleeting shadows in the corner of her eye, and dreams that felt almost too vivid to be just dreams. Around that time, she was also reconnecting with some people from her past, old friends and family members whose memories stirred something deep inside her. These reunions weren't all warm and easy, there was tension, unresolved history, and secrets left unspoken, creating a tangled web that no one could quite explain. What's fascinating, and what makes this story so gripping, is that those around her began noticing changes too. Her closest friends mentioned that she seemed distracted, almost like she was hearing things no one else could. And if you've ever experienced that eerie sensation of knowing something is off but not being able to put your finger on it, you'll understand the kind of unease that settled around her like a shadow. As she searched for answers, she found herself drawn to that record shop, a place she had passed by countless times but never really stepped inside until that day. And that record wasn't the only thing she walked out with, she also carried a sense of mystery that was impossible to shake. What makes the whole situation even more puzzling is the history behind the record itself. Rumors have circulated online and in whispered conversations about its origin, a limited pressing from a local band from decades ago, whose members vanished under strange circumstances. Some say the band was cursed, others believe the record is haunted, containing messages from beyond. These theories might sound like internet folklore or urban legends, but when you factor in the voice that spoke her name, suddenly the story takes on a whole new, unsettling layer. Now, if you think this is all just spooky coincidence, consider the people connected to this record. There's the old record store owner, a man who rarely talks but always watches, his eyes filled with secrets he never shares. Then there's the girl's ex-boyfriend, who recently reached out after months of silence, stirring up emotions and memories that seemed better left alone. And not to mention the mysterious woman she spotted near the shop the day she bought the record, someone who vanished before she could say hello but whose presence lingered like a question mark. Each of these characters adds complexity and raises the stakes, making it impossible to tell who or what is behind the strange occurrences. What's real? What's imagined? And who stands to gain if this mystery unravels? As the layers peel back, the tension grows thicker. Every clue seems to lead to more questions rather than answers. Was the voice on the record a warning, a call for help, or something else entirely? Could it be linked to her family history in ways she never suspected? Or is this all just the product of her mind, stretched to the edge by stress and coincidence? These are the questions that keep the story alive, pulling you deeper into the unknown. And that's why you can't look away, not just because of the chilling voice that says her name, but because beneath that moment lies a story about connection, loss, and the shadows that linger just beyond what we can see. So as you watch, keep your eyes open for the smallest details and the quietest hints. There's a reason why this girl heard her full name spoken from a record made decades ago, and the answer isn't as simple as it seems. Stick with me, and I'll take you step by step through the twists, the turns, and the red herrings, because in stories like this, nothing is what it appears, and every discovery could change everything. The truth is waiting just around the corner, but getting to it means navigating a maze of secrets and surprises that no one saw coming. What happened next is going to blow your mind, and I promise you won't want to miss a second of it. Just as she started piecing together what little she could about the record and the strange voice, things took a turn that no one could have predicted, like the universe suddenly deciding to close the door on her search before it really began. One day, she realized that a crucial piece of evidence, something she thought was the key to everything, had vanished without a trace. It was the original sleeve of the record, the one that had strange, handwritten notes on the inside, notes she'd spotted as soon as she got home. They hinted at a secret message, a code, or maybe a confession tied to the band and the voice on the record. But when she went back to look for it, it was gone, no sign anywhere. She checked with friends who had been helping, retraced her steps, and even searched the record shop again, but nobody could explain what happened. It was like the evidence just disappeared into thin air, as if someone or something didn't want her to uncover the truth. And then, things got even more intense when a warning arrived unexpected, chilling, and hard to ignore. Late one night, after hours of going over everything she knew, she received a message from an unknown number. The words were simple but deadly clear: stop digging. Some things are better left buried. No name, no explanation, just a stark threat that rattled her to the core. It was one thing to chase a mystery on your own, but when someone else shows up with a warning, it shifts everything. She started looking over her shoulder, wondering who could have sent it. Was it the record store owner, who seemed to know more than he let on? Or maybe her ex-boyfriend, whose sudden return felt more like a setup than a reunion? And then there was the woman she'd seen near the shop, the one who disappeared so quickly she almost thought she imagined her. Could any of these people be friend or foe? Or was there someone else, lurking behind the scenes, pulling strings she couldn't see? Adding to the confusion was a secret from her own past she'd never fully confronted, a betrayal that had fractured a once close friendship and left scars she'd tried to forget. As she dug deeper, she realized that the history behind the record wasn't just about a haunted band or a mysterious voice, it was tangled up with her own story in ways she never expected. That betrayal seemed connected to the record's origins, and someone close to her might be hiding the truth. The tension grew heavier every day, and trust became a luxury she couldn't afford. Allies became suspects, and every new clue raised more questions than answers. Even the friends she leaned on started to seem distant, as if they were holding back pieces of the puzzle or worse, shielding her from something they thought she wasn't ready to face. The feeling that she was being watched, manipulated, and tested intensified. It was no longer just about an old record or a voice calling her name. It was about survival, uncovering the layers of lies and secrets that threatened to consume her. And just when it seemed like she might finally crack the case, another twist hit that nobody saw coming, a discovery that turned the entire story upside down and made her question everything she believed. But that revelation is one I can't share just yet. Because what happened next changes the game completely and leaves her standing at a crossroads where the past and present collide in the most unexpected way. And trust me, when you find out what that is, you'll understand why this isn't just a creepy mystery, it's a real-life thriller with stakes higher than anyone imagined. So stay with me, because the next part of this story will blow your mind and you won't want to miss what happens when the secrets start fighting back. Just as she tried to steady herself from the shock of that impossible twist, the mystery suddenly deepened in ways she never saw coming, pulling someone close to her into the tangled web she was desperately trying to escape. It wasn't just her anymore, her younger brother, who had always been the quiet, steady presence in her life, started receiving strange messages too, messages that echoed the eerie warning she got but with a disturbing twist. His texts were cryptic, filled with symbols and fragments of sentences that didn't make sense at first, but gradually formed a pattern that linked back to the record and the band's shadowy past. At first, she thought it might be coincidence, or maybe even a prank, but the way he started withdrawing from everyone, shutting down calls and texts, told her otherwise. There was no doubt now, whatever was haunting her was reaching out to the people she cared about most, spreading like a shadow over her family. And if that wasn't enough to make her question everything, a new piece of evidence surfaced that contradicted everything she thought she knew. One of the old newspaper clippings she found hidden inside a second-hand book, a story she'd believed was unrelated, revealed that one of the band members had a secret life that nobody had ever talked about before. A life filled with betrayal, dangerous liaisons, and a scandal that could have destroyed the band if it ever got out. This revelation didn't just complicate the timeline, it flipped the entire narrative on its head. Suddenly, the voice on the record wasn't just some eerie ghost, it was potentially a message from someone trying to expose the truth or maybe even warn her about the dangers lurking in plain sight. And with every new discovery, she found herself questioning the people around her more and more. Could the record store owner really be just an innocent bystander, or was he connected to the darker secrets in ways she never imagined? Was her ex-boyfriend's return truly about rekindling old feelings, or was he hiding something that made him part of the puzzle? Even her closest friends began to feel like suspects, as small inconsistencies in their stories popped up and loyalties blurred. The tension in every conversation was thick enough to cut with a knife, and trust became an elusive, fragile thing she could barely hold on to. The stakes kept rising, pushing her further into a world where the lines between friend and foe, past and present, truth and deception, were impossible to distinguish. Every lead opened new doors but also unleashed new dangers, and it became clear that whoever was behind these messages had a far-reaching influence, and they weren't afraid to use it to keep the truth buried. Just when she thought she might catch a break, a new threat emerged, one that wasn't just a warning but a direct challenge. It's a fight against a past that refuses to stay buried, and a race to uncover a truth so dangerous, it could change everything you thought you knew. So buckle up, because the real story, the one behind the voice, the record, and the vanished brother, is just about to unfold, and nothing will ever be the same again. With that shocking revelation hanging heavy in the air, she suddenly found herself at a crossroads where every path was lined with impossible choices and crushing consequences. It wasn't just about unraveling a mystery anymore, it was about deciding what she was willing to sacrifice for the truth, and what lines she couldn't cross without losing herself. The people she cared about, the life she'd known, everything was tangled up in a way that made it impossible to separate friend from foe, love from betrayal. Her mind was spinning with questions that had no clear answers, and the weight of the situation pressed down on her like a storm threatening to break. One night, after days of sleepless tension, she confronted the person she thought she could trust the most, someone who had been there through every twist, every secret uncovered, every moment of doubt. It wasn't easy to speak the words, but she needed to know the truth, no matter how painful. When she laid out what she knew, the shadows in that person's eyes told her that the betrayal ran deeper than she ever imagined. The conversation cracked open a wound she wasn't ready to face, revealing hidden motives, old resentments, and alliances forged in silence. That person's involvement wasn't black and white, it was messy, tangled with love and regret, fear and loyalty. It was the kind of betrayal that doesn't just break trust, it reshapes your entire world. But as if that wasn't enough, the stakes escalated even further when she received an ultimatum, clear, cold, and impossible to ignore. The message was simple: back off, or lose everything. The safety of her family, the life she fought to protect, even her own freedom was on the line. The choice was brutal: walk away and live with the gnawing pain of unanswered questions and a brother still missing, or press forward and risk everything for a truth that might shatter her completely. The tension was unbearable, a knife twisting in her heart as she weighed what mattered more: peace or justice, love or survival. Every moment felt like walking a tightrope over an abyss, with no safety net below. Her mind raced with fears and doubts, wondering if the sacrifices would ever be worth the price. Could she keep fighting when the lines between right and wrong blurred into shades of grey? Would exposing the truth heal the wounds or deepen them beyond repair? And most terrifying of all, could she trust herself to make the right choice when everything she held dear was at stake? The pressure was relentless, and the answers nowhere in sight. As the danger closed in and shadows grew longer, she realized that this wasn't just a story about a haunted record or a whispered name, it was a battle for her very soul, and every decision could change the course of her life forever. This was no longer about solving a mystery, it was about surviving it, and the hardest part was yet to come. The question now is, what will she choose when the time comes, and are you ready to see what happens next? Because in this story, the line between hero and victim is razor-thin, and every step forward could lead to a breakthrough or a breakdown. The answers you're waiting for are just beyond the horizon, but the path there is more treacherous than ever before. Stay close, because the real fight is only beginning. As she dug deeper into the tangled web of secrets, the truth crashed down on her like a tidal wave, shattering any illusions she had left about the scale of what she was up against. This wasn't just a small circle of people trying to bury a family secret, it was a sprawling conspiracy that reached far beyond her world, stretching into places she never imagined and pulling in more players than she ever suspected. The people she'd thought were allies, the ones who had seemed to offer comfort and guidance in the darkest moments, revealed themselves as part of the machinery working to keep the truth hidden at all costs. The friendly record store owner wasn't just a shopkeeper, he was a gatekeeper for those secrets, silently watching and manipulating the story like a puppeteer from the shadows. And the old family friend who had dropped the first bombshell? Their loyalties were far more complicated than she realized. They were caught between protecting her and protecting themselves, their betrayal slicing deeper than any stranger's threat ever could. The pace of her world accelerated suddenly, the quiet moments replaced by a frantic rush of new information, narrow escapes, whispered threats, and unsettling encounters that left her breathless. Every discovery brought new danger, every step forward pushed her closer to a point of no return. She was being hunted, watched, and boxed in from all sides, with no clear way out. The line between friend and foe blurred into a dangerous fog where trust was a luxury she could no longer afford. And then, the ultimate betrayal hit. A person she loved and believed was her strongest ally turned out to be working against her all along, feeding information back to those who wanted her silenced. The shock cut through her like a knife, leaving her reeling, questioning everything she had thought was real. It wasn't just the voice on the record or the chilling warnings anymore, this was a high-stakes battle for control, for power, for survival. And the clock was ticking fast. The pressure was suffocating, the weight of the conspiracy pressing down like a storm about to break. She felt the walls closing in, the threat no longer distant but dangerously close, breathing down her neck with every move she made. The fear wasn't just about what she might discover next, it was about what would happen if she failed. Would her brother ever be found? Could she expose the truth without losing herself? And most terrifyingly, could she trust anyone to stand by her side when even love had turned to betrayal? The stakes had never been higher, and the fight was far from over. This was the moment where everything hung in the balance, where every choice could mean the difference between freedom and destruction. So stay with me, because what happens next will shake the very foundation of this story, and the truth you thought you knew will be tested in ways you never expected. This isn't just a mystery anymore, it's a race against time, against shadows that refuse to stay hidden, and against the forces willing to do anything to keep the past buried forever. It all came to a head in a place that should have felt safe, an abandoned house tucked behind a row of forgotten buildings on the edge of town, the kind of place where secrets could live for decades without anyone noticing. She was drawn there by a trail of clues too specific to ignore, a series of marked photographs tucked inside a dusty library book, a set of coordinates scribbled on the back of one of the missing record sleeves, and a voicemail she recovered from her brother's cloud backup that had somehow reappeared after being mysteriously deleted. Everything pointed to that location, and by the time she arrived, she wasn't even sure if she was ready for what she might find. The house was dead silent, filled with the kind of stillness that screams danger, but she pushed forward, heart pounding, every instinct telling her to run. And then she found it, the room. Inside, surrounded by ancient boxes of records and film reels, was the truth she'd been chasing for what felt like forever. There were files, recordings, and most importantly, a hidden tape that played the unedited version of the record that had started it all. This version didn't just whisper her name, it explained why. The voice belonged to her grandfather, not a ghost, not a stranger, but a man who had tried to expose a powerful group back in the 70s. He'd encoded a message into the record, a confession masked as music, naming names, and detailing a cover-up that reached into the town's political elite and law enforcement. The record was never meant to haunt, it was meant to warn. But before she could take it all in, she heard the floorboards creak behind her. She turned to find the person she had least expected standing in the doorway, her ex-boyfriend, the one who had wormed his way back into her life with apologies and promises of protection. His face, once familiar and trusted, now looked like a mask, one she could finally see through. He hadn't come back to help her, he was part of it, a handler of sorts, planted to monitor her progress and redirect her away from the truth when she got too close. He didn't want to hurt her, or so he said, but he couldn't let her leave with what she knew. The confrontation wasn't a physical fight, it was psychological warfare, words thrown like knives, each sentence more devastating than the last. He tried to convince her it was for her own good, that some truths are too dangerous, that she was never supposed to be the one to finish what her grandfather started. But she was done being manipulated. With her voice shaking but firm, she played the final part of the tape, forcing him to listen to what had been buried all those years, a detailed account of names, dates, and the one thing that tied them all together, a foundation, long thought to be a charity, that was a front for money laundering and trafficking secrets through music pressings distributed through the town's once thriving record scene. And just as he lunged to destroy the tape, the final twist dropped like a bombshell. From behind him stepped her brother, alive, pale, and visibly shaken, but standing strong. He had escaped, using knowledge she never knew he had, and had followed his own trail back to this place, arriving just in time to reveal that he had been recording everything. Every word, every threat, every confession, it was all captured and backed up to a secure drive that had already been uploaded to a whistleblower site. There was no going back now. The moment hung suspended in the air, charged with adrenaline and disbelief, as the full weight of the conspiracy unraveled in real time. Sirens began to wail in the distance, a signal that the final act was in motion. But just when it felt like justice was finally within reach, one last chilling realization hit her. Not everyone involved had been named on the tape. There were still others out there, silent, watching, waiting. The story might be coming to a close, but the danger was far from over. As she stepped out of that house, evidence in hand and her brother by her side, the wind whispered through the trees like a warning. The truth is powerful, but some forces will never stop trying to bury it. And as the camera fades, you're left wondering, what would you have done if your name had been on that record? Because in stories like this, no one's ever really safe. Not when secrets are still playing in the background. In the weeks that followed the confrontation in the abandoned house, everything changed, slowly, then all at once. The story that had once felt like a private nightmare playing out beneath the surface of her everyday life was now out in the open, its roots exposed like a tree ripped from the ground. The uploaded recordings sparked a media frenzy, with the voices of those who had been silenced finally given a platform, and a town that had once seemed so ordinary became the center of a national scandal. Names were named, charges filed, and those who had operated in the shadows for decades were finally dragged into the light. But justice, as she quickly learned, was never simple. Some of those involved vanished before they could be brought to trial. Others buried their secrets deeper, protected by systems built to withstand the truth. The foundation at the heart of the conspiracy dissolved overnight, but rumors spread that its operations had merely shifted, moved underground, or relocated to a new town, a new method, a new face. There was no neat ending, no perfect sense of closure. And yet, something inside her had shifted. She was no longer the girl haunted by a record she couldn't explain. She had become the one who stood up and faced the shadows when no one else would. Her brother, now safe and back home, had changed too. The trauma left scars they didn't always talk about, but there was an unspoken bond between them that hadn't been there before, a shared understanding of what it meant to survive something designed to break you. The record itself, the original artifact that started it all, was placed in a private archive, kept safe but no longer hidden. Every now and then, she would visit it, not out of fear or obsession, but to remind herself of what she'd been through and what had been lost along the way. She started documenting the full story, not for fame or attention, but so no one could ever silence it again. It became more than just her story, it was a piece of American history that had nearly been erased, a warning carved into vinyl and almost forgotten. Still, there were moments that kept her up at night. The way her ex-boyfriend had looked at her before he was taken away, calm, almost relieved. Like he knew something she didn't, something unfinished. And then there was the final item she found weeks later, buried in her mailbox with no note, no return address, just a small flash drive containing a distorted audio file. It was barely audible, filled with static and broken speech, but at the end, one thing was unmistakable: her name, spoken again in that same familiar voice. It wasn't her grandfather this time. It was someone else. Someone new. And that's when she realized it wasn't over. The story might have reached its climax, but whatever had begun all those years ago wasn't done with her yet. She stared at the drive for hours, torn between fear and curiosity, but she didn't play it again. Not yet. Maybe she needed time. Or maybe she already knew that the truth she uncovered was only the first layer of something deeper, something more dangerous. And maybe, just maybe, some stories aren't meant to have endings. They're meant to echo, to keep people questioning, to remind us that not everything fits neatly into a box. Because behind every mystery, every voice caught in static, every name whispered from the shadows, there's always someone watching. And sometimes, the scariest part of uncovering the truth is realizing how much of it still waits in silence. So if you've made it this far, remember this: it all started with a girl, a dusty record, and a voice calling her name. And if you ever hear yours, you better be ready. Because the truth doesn't knock. It plays slow, strange, and just loud enough to change everything. It's not just any trash, it's a sketchbook. But here's the kicker: every single page inside is filled with drawings of you. Not just random sketches, but detailed, intimate, and sometimes unsettling portraits that seem to capture moments only you would know. Now, imagine the shock, the confusion, and the eerie pull you feel trying to understand who could have created this mysterious book, and why it ended up discarded like garbage. This isn't just a story about finding something unusual, it's a deep dive into identity, obsession, and secrets hidden in plain sight. Right now, I want you to stay with me because by the end of this video, you'll discover the shocking truth behind the sketchbook, why it's so connected to one teenage girl, and what it means for her life going forward. Trust me, this is a mystery you won't want to miss. Let's be honest, we all crave connection, to feel seen and understood. But what happens when you realize someone has been watching you so closely, they know your story better than you do yourself? That's exactly the kind of chilling situation our main character finds herself in, a teenage girl, just like many of you watching now, who thought her life was ordinary until this unexpected discovery shattered her sense of safety and normalcy. You might think, who would draw me? Why would someone go to such lengths? These questions aren't just hers, they're yours now, too. And as you watch this story unfold, you're going to feel that same rush of curiosity and unease that she felt holding that sketchbook for the first time. It's a journey into the unknown, into the dark corners of someone's mind, and maybe, into your own fears and secrets as well. I want you to imagine the exact moment when she flips through the pages, every image more personal and revealing than the last. Each drawing is like a mirror reflecting parts of her life she never shared, moments she barely remembered, and emotions she never expected to see from someone else's perspective. This is where the story really grabs you, because it's not just about a sketchbook. It's about trust, invasion, and the blurry line between admiration and obsession. It's a story that makes you question, how well do we really know the people around us? And how much do they know about us? This story will hold your attention because it taps into a deep psychological truth, our need to understand ourselves through others' eyes, even when those eyes might be watching us too closely. As you watch, pay attention to how the girl reacts. Her emotions shift from confusion to fear, and then something even more unexpected. You'll meet her friends, people who seem trustworthy at first but might be hiding something. You'll also get glimpses of the mysterious artist behind the sketches, a character who is both intriguing and terrifying, whose motives remain unclear. The atmosphere of this story is thick with suspense and emotion, making you feel like you're right there with her, turning those pages, piece by piece uncovering a puzzle that's bigger than anyone imagined. It's not just a thriller, it's a psychological drama wrapped in the everyday struggles of a teenager trying to find her place in the world while facing a threat she never saw coming. This story touches on themes that resonate deeply with many of us: privacy, identity, and the haunting feeling of being watched without knowing why. It's a reminder of how fragile our sense of self can be when confronted with unknown forces, and how brave we have to be to confront the shadows lurking in our own lives. I want you to stick around because every detail matters, every drawing tells a piece of the story that leads to a revelation you won't see coming. If you've ever felt like someone was paying attention to you a little too closely, or if you love unraveling mysteries that challenge what you think you know, this video is made for you. Now, before we dive deeper into this strange and unsettling discovery, I want you to hold on to this question: who made that sketchbook? Why did they throw it away? And most importantly, what does it want the girl and you to know? These questions will drive the story forward and keep you guessing until the very end. I promise, the answers are going to blow your mind. So keep watching, because the mystery isn't just about a sketchbook in the trash, it's about a secret that's about to change everything. But here's where things get even stranger. Just as she begins to feel like she might be able to piece together the story behind the drawings, something happens that no one could have predicted, something that will turn the entire mystery upside down and make her, and you, question everything she thought was true. The next part is where the real story begins, and I guarantee you don't want to miss a second of it. Stick around, because what happens next will leave you breathless. As we peel back the layers of this story, it's important to understand who this girl really is and what her life looked like just before that chilling discovery. She's a typical teenager in many ways, juggling school, friendships, and the endless pressure to figure out who she is. But beneath the surface, things weren't quite as simple. Lately, she'd been feeling off, like there was something lurking just beyond her vision, something she couldn't quite put a name to. She'd started noticing small things: her phone buzzing late at night with no messages, whispers in the halls that stopped when she turned around, the unnerving sensation that someone was watching her even when she was alone. At first, she brushed it off as stress, or maybe her imagination running wild, but now, holding that sketchbook filled with her likeness, she couldn't ignore it any longer. In the days leading up to finding the sketchbook, her world was a complicated mix of school drama and personal struggles. She had a group of close friends who seemed supportive, but even within that circle, there were tensions she tried to avoid. One friend had been acting strangely distant, another was caught up in their own issues, and then there was the new kid, someone who had shown a sudden, almost unsettling interest in her. This newcomer was quiet, kept to themselves mostly, but whenever their paths crossed, she felt an inexplicable chill. Could they be connected to the sketchbook? Was this person simply a red herring, or was there more beneath the surface? The truth was blurred, and every interaction now felt loaded with unspoken meaning. At school, rumors started swirling. Some whispered about a stalker, others about a secret admirer gone too far. But no one seemed to have any solid answers. The mystery grew thicker as she realized that the sketches weren't just accurate, they showed moments no one else could have known about, scenes from her private life that she hadn't shared with a soul. Who had been watching her so closely? Was it someone from her past, someone she trusted, or a stranger lurking in the shadows? The tension mounted as she sifted through memories and relationships, trying to find a clue that would make sense of this nightmare. Every possibility seemed to open up more questions than answers, and with every step closer to the truth, the danger seemed to grow. Even her family life added another layer of complexity.